Well, let's go back to that, because that's actually a very famous British tradition called the pop concerts. Usually take place in the Royal Albert Hall in London. And they've been brought to Hong Kong to celebrate the end of empire. It was quite an evening. And there's the Royal Yacht Britannia, reminding us that there was a time when Britain ruled almost 800 million people. And when they lose Hong Kong in several hours from now, they will rule in their dependent territories, as they are now called, about 180,000 people. Most of those dependent territories being in rather remote places, with the possible exception of those in the Caribbean, with which so many American tourists are familiar. Now, by absolute way of contrast to that arrival, or by that departure of the British, singing as they are, let us show you the most dramatic picture that people in Hong Kong have seen here today. For the first time in the history of Hong Kong, a Chinese leader comes to Hong Kong. Chinese President Jiang Zemin and the Premier Li Peng, who came down shortly after, arriving at Kai Tak International Airport here. This is the single most symbolic picture we have seen today until the departure later this evening of Prince Charles. Li Peng, the Prime Minister, sometimes criticized as the butcher of Beijing, the man who many people outside China particularly perceive as having taken a crucial role in the crackdown at Tiananmen Square. He was the one who signed the order for martial law. And there is President Jiang Zemin, who's come here again, as all the Chinese political leadership has said very loudly and clearly to the rest of the world, particularly to the United States. The basic law with which they have agreed on with Britain to govern Hong Kong for the next 50 years is what they will abide for. So they've gone out of their way publicly in the last several days to try to overcome the deeply held suspicion in many parts of the world about China's authority here. Now, as we're watching that, let's check in with one of our correspondents who's lived out here longer than most people. Down below us on the parade ground where the British will beat their final retreat is ABC's Mark Litke. Mark, good morning. I should tell people at home it's a very sticky, stormy morning here. This is typhoon season in the South China Sea. Hey, Mark, give us some impressions. You've been down and out and about today.
Good morning, Peter. It is not just raining, it is soggy, and it's taking some of the fun out of this ceremony, I think, for a lot of people. One of the tragedies as I look down here you can't see emotions and people and reactions to the events taking place as I'm about to fall over here. Because there's just a sea of umbrellas out here. In fact, when one musical number ends, people just stomp on the grandstands. But I suspect it will pick up as His Royal Highness Prince Charles speaks, and we get into the traditional pomp and ceremony that the British are so very good at. You're going to see a lot of nostalgia, a lot of patriotism, a lot of stiff upper lips melting into some strong emotions, I think, in the final moments of this thing. We're about 20 minutes away now from the actual moment that the Union Jack will be lowered, and this will no longer be, from the British point of view, their colony. There are the ceremonies farther up the harbor at the convention center, of course, but this is the ceremony that was so important to the British. This was the ceremony that they hoped to show they could walk out of here with pride and dignity, pride that they were leaving behind the most prosperous and arguably the most self-confident colony in history.
Mark, thanks very much. There's, you can see back on the screen behind Mark Lippy there this morning, and you can certainly hear, but it's been a very careful blending in the last several days of Chinese and British. This is Gwyneth Jones, English opera star, who was here to participate in the closing ceremonies. Very careful blending. The governor of Hong Kong, Chris Patten, has been absolutely clear that what he wanted to do is to leave here absolutely certain that Britain leaves here without any resentment whatsoever for foreigners. As I said, there's just a tiny bit of confusion around here today because we've been indoors and outdoors like everybody else in Hong Kong because of the weather. So if our communications are at any moment slightly shaky, you'll know that a lot of people are running around here trying to make them better. I said at the beginning that this was a worldwide story, and as we embark even more deeply on a special edition of Good Morning America, for those of you who have just joined us, we're here for the celebration, the commemoration of the change from British to Chinese rule in Hong Kong. And in this particular moment, people all around the world are engaged, some for political reasons, but between 30 and 50 million Chinese live around the world, some of them in the United States, of course, some of them in Canada. And before we go and check in with, among other people, the west coast of Canada, the west coast of the States, let us give you a brief glimpse as to how, in the shortest history lesson you may have ever have heard, how the British actually got themselves to this moment. It has been a century and a half of war, revolution, and prosperity. The British first raised their flag in 1841. They fought the Chinese again before signing the 99-year lease, which turned a fishing village into a trading post. In World War II, the Japanese occupied Hong Kong, but when the British got it back, the trading post became a financial powerhouse. There were always reminders of power that lay to the north, and by 1984, Britain was compelled to negotiate the end of its lease. Tiananmen Square tested the world's confidence in China, and now here we are. The British are saying goodbye, and we are hours away from being in China. I don't know how many of you are into electronics. This is the electronic center of the universe out here in Asia, right? But let me tell you what damp weather does to microphones, so we're just going to change another one. It is, lest you be confused, a little after 7 o'clock in the evening here in Hong Kong, and in 5 hours minus a few moments, the official handover will occur. We'll see the governor of Hong Kong, Chris Patten, having a thoroughly emotional evening and speaking in a variety of places. But in 5 hours from now, the absolute official handover. Look at those clouds over the Hong Kong side, and that's the other side of Victoria Harbour, this being one of the most famous deep-water ports in the world. And over those mountains there in the background, of course, is mainland China. And at any given moment, this is the busiest container port in the world. When the British Navy came here at the time of that first war, that so-called Opium War with the Chinese, the political leadership at home wasn't very pleased to have this particular piece of land. They would have liked to have been closer to the then heart of China, but they got this magnificent deep-water port, with which almost anybody in the world who's got any connection to geography at all is now familiar. It's quite a tiny place, 453 square miles, and it is actually this little bit of Hong Kong you're looking at right now that the British have always held in perpetuity. Their first agreement with the Chinese gave them this land forever. It's only when they made an additional agreement from some extra land over there on the other side of the harbor, so-called new territories, on a 99-year lease, that it became an absolute matter of assumption that they were going to lose it at some time. Back and forth across this harbor, the ferries ply 24 hours a day, and in the back you can see the cruise ships, which are now so...
Talking to Lu Ping, who is the Chinese official in charge of Hong Kong affairs in Beijing a few months ago, and he said, we have to have some shelter because I know, he said, it's going to rain, and indeed he was right. Off to my left, we're going to see very shortly the embarkation of the Chinese leadership from the far shore in Kowloon. We've just seen the Hong Kong police force dispatch what they call the Taifeis, the high-speed boats, which are providing security along with other of the maritime police force ships out here. And across the harbor, the Chinese leadership will come, Jiang Zemin, and will land at a newly built pier right behind me at the convention center. So from the Chinese point of view, this is going to be the main event inside that convention center, Peter.
Okay, Jim, thanks so much. I must confess, looking at that extraordinarily wealthy skyline, one wonders what Jiang Zemin, the Chinese leader, and Li Peng will see when they first see this place, for which Chinese, whatever the political leadership down through their history, the nationalists and the communists, have always had this dream of reclaiming Hong Kong, and certainly subsequently of reclaiming Taiwan. And the reason this is such a big and important story for the United States is that we in the United States now are inserted as the principal guarantors, one might say, of Hong Kong. The British are a tiny colonial power and they go home, and this part of the world is now so utterly crucial to America. Charlie Gibson, we've been all looking at all the statistics. 50% of the world's growth in the next 10 years is going to be created here, and this part of the world is growing 2 times faster than the North American Free Trade Agreement zone and the European Economic Community combined. So it's stunning what's happening out here.
Yes, and Peter, the extraordinary thing, I was struck looking at those pictures of Jiang Zemin arriving in Hong Kong, because what culturally he must be going through in his own mind. Here is this tiny little enclave, as you mentioned, only a few hundred square miles, about one-third the size of Rhode Island. And yet this enclave represents about, or will represent now, almost 20% of the gross national product of China. And so what he must think as he arrives there is extraordinary. There are a couple of other stories that we want to be following as the morning goes on, and we will be reporting on those from New York. We start, obviously, with the strange, bizarre, and ugly events that occurred Saturday night in the so-called heavyweight championship fight. After that fight ended Saturday night, Mike Tyson said in his dressing room that he knew his career was over. Tyson, as you probably know by now, could face suspension, a fine, a lawsuit, and possibly even prison time after biting Evander Holyfield's ears during the championship fight. ABC's Armin Katayan has a report.
The fallout continues over one of the most controversial nights in heavyweight history. Lawyers and lawmakers got into the act, raising questions over whether criminal charges should be filed against Tyson. Holyfield's lawyer argued Tyson should be held accountable for biting off a piece of the champion's ear.
When somebody does something to harm the sport, then that person needs to have some consequences. Otherwise, you're telling everybody that they all ought to break the rules.
During this melee that followed the fight, Tyson also took a swing at a Las Vegas Metropolitan Police officer. If found guilty of assault, Tyson, who is still on parole after serving 3 years for a rape conviction, could return to prison. Tomorrow, the State Athletic Commission will meet to decide whether they will take further disciplinary action against the former heavyweight champ. The commission temporarily suspended Tyson late Saturday night and has held up his $30 million purse pending the hearing.
This is, I hate to say it, so far the most bizarre thing I've seen.
And now one of Nevada's top lawmakers has urged the Athletic Commission to use its powers to conduct an investigation into whether Tyson's activities amounted to a crime. Charlie?
Armin, I gather you've had a chance to talk to somebody on the Athletic Commission?
I did last night.
And?
Well, it's interesting. First of all, they're going to move slowly because of the legal proceedings involved. But second of all, he was really disgusted, I think, not only for the damage done to Evander Holyfield, but the damage done to the city of Las Vegas, to the casinos, to their big customers, to the state of Nevada, and most importantly, I think, to the state of boxing.
Yeah, when you hear somebody, an Athletic Commission official, saying it's the most bizarre thing he's ever seen in boxing, that's extraordinary, because there have been a lot of bizarre things and strange things in this sport. As you watched it, was it deliberate, what Tyson did?
Oh, absolutely. Tyson was out of control at that point in time. It was a retaliation on his part. He had felt, as I said, that Holyfield had head-butted him. There was nothing he could do. But a lot of people also feel that Tyson, after hitting Holyfield, this sack of cement that was in the ring, felt that there really wasn't much he could do as a boxer, and this was sort of a last resort.
A way to get out of it. All right, Armin Katayan, thank you very much. One other story, the Mir space station. Some creature comforts have returned to the space station 5 days after it lost some power in a collision. The lights are back on, so is the air conditioning. In a news conference yesterday, the Russian commander aboard the Mir said simply he's happy to be alive, and there are attempts underway to fix it, but both the cosmonauts and the U.S. astronaut aboard say it's going to be very tricky to get the Mir fixed. That is a couple of other stories we're following this morning, but obviously the main focus on Hong Kong. We also want to get you caught up on U.S. weather. Sam Champion from WABC is here for Spencer Christian. Will be this week. Sam, what do you got?
Good morning, Charlie. Since we lead up the week to the 4th of July, a lot of people planning holidays. We'll look ahead for the most part in the weather map, as well as tell you what's going on today. Nice and mild and very warm in the eastern seaboard. Now, later on in the week, some cooler air drops into the northeast, so enjoy the warm stuff now. The cool temperatures that have really been holding on in the northwest continue to do that for a good part of the week, but it's very hot and steamy. Really, all the way from Las Cruces all the way to Tucson, you've got to expect temperatures well above 100 degrees with that. Thunderstorms and thunder showers scattered all over, really, through the southeast and running this line well up around the Great Lakes. But as far as temperatures go, everyone just about where they should be this time of year. We will notice again cooler air dropping down by the end of the week across the northeast. That's the weather around the nation. Here's what you can expect this morning.
Good morning, I'm Cecily Tynan. Hope you enjoyed the weekend. It's going to be another beautiful day. Sky 6 right now is taking a look at the back bays of Atlantic City. Right now in Philadelphia, we have some high clouds around. 65 degrees, and AccuWeather says it'll be mostly sunny throughout the day. Our afternoon high 86, 2 degrees cooler than yesterday with low humidity. Tonight's going to be partly cloudy, overnight low 66 degrees.
More weather in the next half hour. Charlie?
All right, thank you very much, Sam. We take a commercial break, and then when we come back, we will return to Hong Kong for more coverage with Peter Jennings of the Hong Kong Handover. We'll be back.
The Hong Kong Handover, a special edition of Good Morning America, will continue in a moment.
Ole, 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 ole. Toyota! Toyota's hot, hot, hot.
The hottest party is back with hot Toyotas and hotter deals.
Toyota's hot, hot, hot.
Get into a smoking new well-equipped Corolla lease and pay just $159 a month. $159 a month. Or buy Corolla and save more with incentives. Is it hot out here? Or is it just us? You've been waiting? The hottest sales event is here at Toyota now.
Live like a man. Steal the covers, big boy. Pump and sweat and lift. Grunt like a man. Do manly things. Grab a bottle of Mega Men multivitamins from GNC. Down 41 ingredients in one tablet. Take those vitamins and minerals and herbs for all they're worth. Very manly. Mega Men multivitamins exclusively at General Nutrition Centers. GNC. Live well.
Well, folks, it's all come down to this. He's got to be feeling the pressure.
You're right, Frank. He clearly doesn't have his good stuff today.
Hold on. The skipper's back from Acme. He's bringing in Kingsford.
Remember, fans, Kingsford is ready twice as fast as other charcoals and burns even longer. Pick some up at Acme and get great savings on all your barbecue needs. Come into Acme Markets today for Kingsford, the surefire.
Hey, this guy's really cooking out there.
The Reading Phillies, Trenton Thunder, and Wilmington Blue Rocks Tri-State Minor League Baseball. Check out all the hits, strikes, double plays, and home runs at one of our fun and friendly ballparks. Tomorrow's Major League stars are here today. Call 1-888-TEAMS-88 to receive your free Tri-State Club card. Have your card stamped at all 3 ballparks and receive a cap from your favorite team free. That number again is 1-888-TEAMS-88. Reading, Trenton, Wilmington, Grand Slam Family Fun.
The Hong Kong Handover, a special edition of Good Morning America. Once again from Hong Kong, Peter Jennings.
The British Grenadiers by the massed bands of the departing British garrison, including the Royal Marines in white there off the Royal Yacht Britannia at the East Tamar Parade Ground in Hong Kong. The British know how to say goodbye. No, I want to see. Black Watch Regiment, Scotland's most senior Highland regiment. There's a lot more of this throughout the evening, or throughout the morning, as the case may be, and we hope you'll stay with us. But we have only a few moments now to do something quite important, which is to welcome briefly the Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright. We said at the beginning that this is an enormous day for the United States because in the 21st century, the relationship between the United States and China becomes the most important one in this part of the world, if not the world. Mrs. Albright, thank you for joining us.
Very good to be with you.
I have a question for you about the ceremonies this evening. When you do not appear tonight, along with the British, at the swearing-in of the new legislature here, and all of America's Asian allies are there, what's the message you want to send?
Well, I believe it's very important for us to have sent a very strong political message that we had thought that the legislature that had been elected was the one that should continue, and that the provisional legislature is not the one that shows the democratic spirit. So I wanted to send a very strong political message. and that is what we're doing.
It leaves the United States identifying really with the departing colonial power. Did you try to talk America's Asian allies into staying away with you?
No, I think that every country had to make its own decision, and this is something that the United States felt very strongly about, that we wanted to send a strong political message, and I believe we're doing that.
Now, all of this talk today is about the British leaving, and the British are a small power. When they leave, does the United States, in essence, insert itself as the guarantor of Hong Kong if things go badly?
Well, there's no question that we are the leading power in the Asia-Pacific region. We have responsibilities, but I think, as you pointed out, Peter, that the Americans have great interest in this area. First of all, we really do see very important to support democracy. We have had very good cooperation here in law enforcement. We believe in the rule of law. About 65 American military ships visit here annually, and of course we have great economic interests here. We have 40,000 Americans who live here. There's about $10 billion worth of American investment here, and over $20 billion of trade. So this is a big and important area for us, and obviously the United States will fulfill its responsibilities.
So if the Chinese didn't keep their word, and that's one of the reasons we're all so concerned about the future of Hong Kong, if the Chinese didn't keep their words and Hong Kong became vulnerable, could one expect the United States to be Hong Kong's guarantor?
Well, we have made very clear to the Chinese, and today when I met with Vice Premier Chen Chi-chen, I did say that we would be watching how they fulfill their commitments in the Sino-British agreement to keep the way of life of Hong Kong. And the way of life of Hong Kong is a combination of democracy, the rule of law, and a free market system. And clearly, it would affect our relationship with the Chinese. But I think, Peter, what we're going to be looking at is a story that is going to be unfurling over a long period of time. This is not a snapshot. And I think the Chinese themselves understand the importance of really maintaining this very special place of Hong Kong. It is going to be a sign of their responsibility as far as the international community is concerned.
Thank you, Mrs. Albright. I know you enjoy a great celebration yourself, so let us go back to the East Tamar Parade Square. Thank you for joining us, and take a look at the British departure.
Thank you.
The Gurkhas from Nepal, who served in the Hong Kong garrison. From the Himalayan kingdom of Nepal, they have served the British for longer than there has been a Hong Kong under British rule.
The Hong Kong Handover, a special edition of Good Morning America, will continue after these messages.
When you're smiling,
People who like Freedent because it won't stick to most dental work love Freedent because it's soft to chew and deliciously long-lasting too. That's why they stick with the gum that won't.
The whole world smiles with you.
Non-stick Freedent, the perfect gum for almost perfect teeth.
If you wear ordinary contact lenses, your eyes may not be as comfortable as they could be. Irritating dirt and deposits build up.
How about the free contacts?
I was just getting there. But AccuView always gives you the comfort of fresh new lenses.
The free contacts?
Oh, right. Call Johnson & Johnson at 1-800-701-6100 and get a free trial pair of AccuView from your doctor. The contacts doctors prescribe most.
Free is good.
Your eyes will feel better all day long.
I like free.
You should call too. 1-800-701-6100.
The good news about eggs is piling up. Recently, the results of 224 studies conducted among 8,000 participants over the past 25 years were compiled by researchers at the University of Arizona. The conclusion? If you're healthy, enjoy eggs along with a low-fat diet. Your cholesterol probably will stay about the same. To get all viewpoints about eggs and cholesterol, talk to your doctor. The incredible edible egg.
Looking for more space? Try the next Century. It's got the most interior space of any vehicle in its class. Because extra space is one luxurious touch that's appreciated by families everywhere. The all-new Century by Buick.
Discover a little luxury in the Century.
This is Action News at 7:25 with Cecily Tynan and Monica Malpass.
Good morning. It is 7:25 on this Monday, June 30th. Mostly cloudy skies, 67 degrees out there right now. We'll check your exclusive AccuWeather forecast in just a moment. In the news, the old Jack Frost Sugar Refinery in Fishtown proved to be a stubborn adversary for demolition crews. Officials tried several times to implode the building yesterday, but with no success. They even wrapped cables around it to try to drag it down. Well, some 12 hours later, without warning, the building finally collapsed on its own. Fortunately, no one was injured. Two young men are lucky to be alive this morning after a freak accident involving a tree in Marion. It happened about 6:30 last night on City Avenue near Raynham Road. Police say two young men were walking in that area when a tree fell on top of them, pinning them to the ground. A passerby helped rescue the victims. They were taken to the University of Pennsylvania Medical Center and treated for minor injuries. No word what caused the tree to give way. Homicide detectives are still looking for a trigger man who left a 35-year-old man dead on the street. Bullets rang out about 8 yesterday morning at Cumberland and Bouvier in North Philadelphia. Gary Williams was struck several times in the head. So far, police have no motive or suspects in the case. And still no sign of two people missing in New Jersey waters over the weekend. 40-year-old Charles Crusher of Philadelphia disappeared in the Delaware Bay near Cape May County while trying to save some children Saturday. 59-year-old Frank Pullum Sr. of Trenton was swimming near his boat in Florence Township when a strong current dragged him under. Officials will decide this morning whether to continue searching for those victims. Well, beginning tomorrow, people in New Jersey will need a special certificate to ride a jet ski or a wave runner. Vacationers will be required to take part in a safety briefing, and riders will be kept in a defined area. Penalties for violators range from $100 to $500. Marine police hope the new rules will improve safety as well as reduce the number of complaints about the watercraft. Well, a stretch of Fairmount Park has been turned into a speedway. Racing teams gathered yesterday at Memorial Hall for the Meisner Chevrolet Philadelphia 500. The mini race cars were modeled after the stock cars that run at Dover and Daytona. Pretty cool. Besides having fun racing, the participants also got a chance to help out a worthy cause. Proceeds from the race will benefit the American Diabetes Association.
This week at Furniture Unlimited, find revolutionary savings at our All-American Summer Sale. You'll save even more off our already low ticketed prices. Take an extra $100 off all sofa and love seat sets, all dining room sets, all master bedroom sets. Take an extra $50 off all wall unit systems, an extra 10% off all curios and in-stock bedding sets, and find hundreds of other savings store-wide. And no interest and no payments till $19.98. The All-American Summer Sale is so big, we're open July 4th, noon till 5. In Voorhees and Deptford, New Jersey, Southampton and Quakertown, PA. The real buys are at Furniture Unlimited.
Oh, what a beautiful morning. Cecily, this is 4 in a row.
I know, Monica. It's going to be another gorgeous day. This morning we have some clouds around, but they're high, they're thin, they're allowing a lot of sunshine to filter through. And right now it's mostly cloudy officially in Philadelphia. 67 degrees. AccuWeather says another gorgeous day. We'll see mostly to partly sunny skies today. Humidity will be low, so 86 degrees will actually be very comfortable. Then for tonight, it's going to be partly cloudy, overnight low dropping to the mid-60s. Tomorrow the humidity will return, so enjoy today. Monica?
Cecily. And that's it for now. Action News continues for you in about a half an hour. Till then, I'm Monica Malpass. Make it a good Monday.
Can you imagine paying off all of your credit card bills? For so many homeowners with credit problems, it may seem impossible. But that's exactly why Champion developed the Clean Slate program. Clean Slate can replace all of your credit card balances and other monthly expenses with a payment you can easily afford. Now you can put money back into your pocket and start to reestablish your credit. Call 1-800-CHAMPION today. Doesn't everyone deserve a second chance? When your bank says no, Champion says yes.
Franklin Mills is proud to welcome America to Philadelphia during this commemorative event. Come see why Franklin Mills welcomes over 18 million shoppers each year to experience over 215 incredible value and entertainment stores, including over 30 new designer stores.
I'm Dr. Stan Truskin. On behalf of the trauma centers of Allegheny University Hospitals, we urge you to keep this 4th of July safe and healthy. Don't drink and drive.
Janet Charlton's Hollywood Gossip, today at 10.
The Hong Kong Handover, a special edition of Good Morning America. Once again live from Hong Kong, Peter Jennings.
1st Battalion of the Black Watch Regiment, Scotland's senior Highland Regiment, passing in review in front of Prince Charles, representing the Queen and the last governor of Hong Kong, Chris Patten, the 28th and last governor, as Britain in 4.5 hours approximately from now gives up its last significant piece of empire. The last British unit to say farewell to India 50 years ago, and now the Royal Air Force. On the East Tamar Parade Ground, Prince Charles, who will shortly leave on board the Royal Yacht Britannia, who's been here for a day or so, who now shares this real estate with the first political leadership of China ever to set foot in Hong Kong. They are here, waiting to take the reins of power. But in the meantime, the majesty in the end of empire. Just in case you're joining us, it's 7:30 in the morning in the eastern United States, 7:30 at night in a very hot and steamy Hong Kong on the edge of the typhoon season. And in 4.5 hours, after 156 years, British rule in Hong Kong will end and Chinese rule will be reinstated. Very shortly, the Chinese army, the People's Liberation Army, the very army that turned on the democratic movement in Tiananmen Square in 1989, will cross the frontier in the numbers of several thousand to replace these men who will sail or fly away into the Asian night. Shenzhen, on the other side of the frontier from what are still the new territories of Hong Kong, but will very shortly be China again, being sent off into Hong Kong today by the senior Chinese military leadership. And there you see it. What a contrast. The Chinese come to govern a place under an agreement with Britain reached several years ago that will keep Hong Kong as is for the next 50 years. In every imaginable way, they said, but it's rather an ambiguous agreement, and one of the concerns has been as to whether or not the People's Liberation Army will assert itself here. In fact, the security and the rule of law in Hong Kong for the next 50 years is supposed to be guaranteed by the Hong Kong police, not by the Chinese military. stand at ease to listen to Prince Charles. During the late 1980s, there was a great deal of speculation that he would be the governor of Hong Kong. It was quickly scotched, but now he comes to speak on behalf of what was once an empire of 800 million people to say goodbye.
Governor, Prime Minister, ladies and gentlemen, I've been asked by Her Majesty the Queen to read the following message. 5 hours from now, the Union flag will be lowered and the flag of China will fly over Hong Kong. More than a century and a half of British administration will come to an end. During that time, Hong Kong has grown from a small coastal settlement into one of the leading cities and one of the greatest trading economies in the world. There have been times of sacrifice, suffering, and courage. As Hong Kong has risen from the ashes of war, a most dramatic transformation has taken place. Millions of destitute immigrants have been absorbed, and Hong Kong has created one of the most successful societies on earth. Britain is both proud and privileged to have been involved with this success story. Proud of the British values and institutions that have been the framework for Hong Kong's success. Proud of the rights and freedoms which Hong Kong people enjoy. Privileged to have been associated with the prodigiously talented and resourceful people of Hong Kong who have built upon that foundation. The British flag will be lowered and British administrative responsibility will end. But Britain is not saying goodbye to Hong Kong. More than 3.5 million Hong Kong residents are British nationals. Thousands of young Hong Kong men and women study in Britain every year. We share language and the English common law. And thousands of Britons, too, have made their homes in Hong Kong. The shared legacy of family and of friendship, trade and investment, culture and history run strong and deep. Britain is part of Hong Kong's history, and Hong Kong is part of Britain's history. We are also part of each other's future. We are confident that the ties between us will not only endure, but will continue to develop. In a shrinking world, Hong Kong's role as Europe's gateway to Asia and Britain's role as Asia's gateway to Europe will reinforce the bonds between our two societies. For all these reasons, my government and I will continue to take the closest interest in Hong Kong and in its development. The British Consulate General, which will be inaugurated in a few hours' time, will be our largest in the world. The Sino-British Joint Liaison Group will continue for another 2.5 years to discuss matters concerning the implementation of the Sino-British Joint Declaration. That joint declaration itself remains in force for 50 years. For many years to come, the Hong Kong connection will command our attention. Hong Kong now faces its transition to Chinese sovereignty in excellent condition, prosperous, stable, and dynamic. Unprecedented though this moment in history may be, we have the utmost confidence in the abilities and resilience of the Hong Kong people. Britain learnt long ago that Hong Kong people know best what is good for Hong Kong. We have no doubt that Hong Kong people can run Hong Kong, as the Joint Declaration promises, and that faithful implementation of the Joint Declaration is the key to Hong Kong's continued success. The eyes of the world are on Hong Kong today. I wish you all a successful transition and a prosperous and peaceful future.
His Royal Highness Prince Charles, brief remarks on behalf of the Queen. You can see the umbrellas go up, though for Chris Patton and for the British Prime Minister Tony Blair right beside him, umbrella is not appropriate today. For the Chinese, this is what they call good feng shui. Chinese meaning wind and water, judging the environment to produce good fortune. So in Chinese terms, being that it's an agricultural country, this is great. And after all, the British are used to rain, so onward we go. Get me another left earpieces. The Hong Kong colonial flag, which will soon be replaced by another special flag of Hong Kong, and the British Union Jack. And it is pouring. In any other part of the world, one would say beyond belief, but this is what we've had for the last several days. Hymn, the day that thou gavest. That East Timor that you see, East Timor, Hong Kong, we'll show you a map very briefly to show you where we are in Hong Kong. It's the East Timor Parade Ground, so named for a river in the southern part of England. And there it is, right on the edge of Victoria Harbour. The legislative building behind the Legislative Council building is where the elected council has sat. It will be dissolved at midnight and replaced by one of Beijing's choosing in the Hong Kong Convention Center. There also on the edge where the handover will take place. And the Royal Hong Kong Yacht Club, the only great British institution here which has so far voted not to take the Royal out of its name. And the Union Jack coming down on the East Timor Parade Ground. The Union Jack, a combination of the flags of England, Scotland, and Ireland. First one created in the year 1606. The present flag, created in 1801, used to fly over such a vast portion of the world, a third of the world's citizens. This is a profoundly emotional moment for many people in Hong Kong, and of course so many people in Great Britain and throughout the Commonwealth. In the torrential Asian rain, the lone piper, Pipe Major Stephen Small from Berwickshire in Scotland, that's the way they say it, the commander of the machine gun platoon, plays a final farewell, trying to impress Small, trying to impress his old tutor, Tom Ainsley, at home in Scotland, watching on television tonight as so many millions of people are throughout the world. If ever there was a moment required for a stiff upper lip, this is it.
Army Guard! Right! Dress!
Of you at home, you will not see this again. Auld Lang Syne. The mass, pipes and bands depart East Tamar Parade Ground in a torrential rain. The consideration of colonialism for the British continues. For so many people in so many parts of the world, colonialism the root of so much evil. For others, some would argue a longer view, colonialism having been one of the more productive forces, as someone wrote today, in human history. But whatever the case, it now comes to an end here in Asia for Britain. Tiny, tiny place, 435 square miles, which is about to become China. It is now more successful in many ways than its motherland. We'll continue this when we come back.
I'll have the chili.
Chili? You should know better.
And I'll have the fries.
Fries? You should know better.
And now I'll have the Mylanta.
Mylanta? You should know better.
You should know. Tums works fast to help knock out heartburn. And while Mylanta liquid uses aluminum and magnesium.
Tums Ultra has calcium, something your body needs anyway. You'll like that.
I'll have the chili. I know. I should know. Tums.
Run with it, Nick.
Ever notice how some small business owners stay calm no matter what the pace?
Helps to delegate.
Sprint understands your business and your priorities.
Yeah, like deadlines.
Here at Sprint's Business Solutions Center, your assigned specialist knows you and how to help your small business.
Kate, has a new toll-free number helped classifieds?
Sales are way up.
Anything else we can do for you?
Yeah, Mike, can you write editorials?
We help your business do more business. Call Sprint Business.
It says here this new Minute Maid Premium tastes like eating a fresh ripe orange. Could it be true?
I don't know, but I mean to find out. Was this extraordinary taste truly like that of a fresh ripe orange? I would not rest until I knew. Finally, there came the moment of truth. The taste of this fresh ripe orange was like the Minute Maid I'd savored just 8 months prior.
New Minute Maid Premium. Bite into it.
She's the reason you need a camera. Let her carry it. Fujifilm presents the smallest one-time use camera.
What causes denture odor? Get close and you'll see. Germs. Introducing Efferdent Plus with fresh burst Listerine ingredients. It kills odor-causing germs, so you can get this close. New Minty Efferdent Plus. Kill the germs, kill the odor.
The Hong Kong Handover, a special edition of Good Morning America. Once again from Hong Kong, Peter Jennings.
Well, there you see some of the great signs that are hanging here in Hong Kong. Everything very carefully done in Chinese and English, as is the way of life here. This colony, or this about to be no longer a colony, is 90% ethnic Chinese. Actually, the American population here is now larger than the British population. But there's been a very careful balance in the last several days to see that those will be unrecognizable figures to you. And as we look at the skyline, the ceremony of departure continues. And while we look at the skyline, we perhaps put in a little corner of the place here one of America's great experts on China who's joined us here. Mike Oxenberg, who's a senior fellow at the Asia Pacific Research Center and a professor of political science at Stanford University. Mike, are you there?
Yes, and how are you, Peter?
I'm fine, thank you. Mike, I first went to China with you in, 1976? Give us your, thanks for being with us. Give us your quick impression about the end of empire here, the end of colonialism, what we can expect from the Chinese.
Well, I can't help but reflect on this occasion of the contribution that Britain has made to the world through the centuries. Parliament, the very notion of Parliament, rule of law.
Mike, let me stop you for 1 second, because we keep hearing part of the ceremony in our ear as well as you, and I think if we could take that out, we might be able to hear you just a little better.
Okay.
All right. That's wonderful. Great relief to get only one of you. Mike, you were going to tell us your thoughts about the end of the colonial empire here and really the sort of emergence of the Chinese empire.
Yeah, there are really three things going through my mind. First is that this really does mark the end of Britain as a significant colonial power, and one cannot help but think about
we were going to have some difficulty because of the weather here with some of our technical problems. I think we have our microphones mixed up a little. The music you hear is from East Tamar Square, and we keep hearing the music from the East Tamar Parade Ground and our other guests at the same time. If I could hear Mike Oxenberg. Mike, you still there?
Yes, I am, if
Good.
you can hear me.
That sounds perfect. I apologize for that. You were going to give us some thoughts on Britain and China.
Well,
go ahead.
Exactly. Let me try and do it briefly, Peter, but this really does represent the end of Britain as a major colonial power, and one can't help but think of the contribution that Britain has made to the world. Parliament's concept of property, individual rights based on the sanctity of property, freedom and liberty. They can leave here with their head held high, not only for their contribution to Hong Kong, but to the entire world. And I think that one has to see this in this moment in that very broad historical perspective. Secondly, China. China now assumes responsibility for governing one of the world's great cities. They now have the challenge and the opportunity to prove that they will be a responsible and major power in world affairs. And then the United States. Where do we fit in? We now are the only Atlantic power that has a security responsibility in Asia. We have to work with our Asian allies as we pursue our values. There are three very powerful themes, and we've seen them all, and will continue in the hours ahead.
Mike, let me just ask you one quick question about Hong Kong itself. You know how much talk there's been at home about whether or not the Chinese will honor their word in Hong Kong, whether human and political rights here will be given the back of the hand as they have been in China. What's your own sense about that?
I'm cautiously optimistic, Peter. I think that the leaders of China want the one country, two systems to work, for Hong Kong to retain its distinctive elements. Certainly the new government that will soon take power, I think on the whole, is committed to maintaining Hong Kong as we know it. But there are obviously many elements of doubt and unknowns. That's why the United States continues to have a role, as does Britain.
Great, Mike. Thanks very much. We'll come back to you as Good Morning America, and our special continues. And as we watch what's going on the East Timor parade ground, we want to check in the mother country for so many Hong Kongers. ABC's Jim Wooten is at Sandown Racetrack outside London. Jim, how are they taking this at home?
Good morning, Peter. Good afternoon it is here. Mostly the British are understated about this, but even more understated than usual. It is as though most British citizens are saying that exactly what is happening in Hong Kong is exactly what should happen in Hong Kong, that it has been for a long time a matter for British bankers, the British military, and the British Home Office. For the average British citizen, it doesn't seem to matter much. Here at Sandown later on today, there will be some ceremonies by the British Hong Kong Society. That's a gathering of several thousand people who have lived in Hong Kong or who have some relationship with it. There are some activities down on the Thames in London, which is about 15 miles away. But by and large, this is a moment which the British citizens will share with you. And I may say that while I'm a little bit blue with the cold here, it's a raw and blustery day, I'm a little bit green with envy that you're there and I'm not.
Thank you, Jim. And now on the East Timor parade ground, the citizens of Hong Kong, the younger citizens of Hong Kong, celebrate the Chinese arrival. We will be back. We will be back with more coverage.
This is ABC.
Come on up to Massachusetts and you can see Plymouth Plantation, where the Pilgrims
dominated the NBA for 8 straight years.
Catch a modern dance performance by the Lobstermen of Rockport.
View priceless works of art
at any clam shack along the coast.
Take a hot air balloon ride
through heavy artillery fire.
And see where Paul Revere rode through the streets yelling, "The British are
Queenies at Fenway Park."
Massachusetts, come on up. We'd love to show you around.
This was me 37 pounds ago, because in my family, we said I love you with food. Ma said it was her lasagna. Nana said it was a triple fudge cake. I was her favorite. This is what all that love did to me. So I called Jenny Craig and lost 37 pounds. It's a great program. Great food, personalized support, even tasty desserts.
Held over by popular demand, you can still lose all the weight you want for free, plus the cost of food. Hurry, this offer ends soon, so call 1-800-97-JENNY now.
Hey, Ma, next time flowers, okay?
Hello, I'm Louis Jackson, president of KFC Philadelphia Co-op. Our restaurants and employees would like to wish you and your family a happy and safe 4th of July.
Sylvester Stallone and Rod Stewart, raising it. Next, Oprah.
Handover, a special edition of Good Morning America. Once again from Hong Kong, Peter Jennings.
All of Hong Kong is alight tonight, and so are many cities in China, by the way. They have really gone all out to celebrate this handover. And down on the East Tamar Parade Square, Prince Charles is now leaving, accompanied by many, many hundreds of Hong Kong school children who have been here in the rain for several hours as they go off to the convention center on the edge of this great harbor to have the officials' ins and outs very specifically negotiated of the handover for Hong Kong to China. They've been debating for months as to exactly who will get the last word at the very stroke of midnight, which is 4 hours from now precisely when the handover occurs. Deborah Wong is with us, and while we watch this, Deborah, can you hear us in Beijing?
I can hear you, Peter.
How are they taking this there at the moment? Have they had a chance to see this coverage, or are they focused only on their own?
Well, it's very interesting, Peter. I've been watching Chinese TV the last couple of hours, and they've been showing a lot of pre-packaged programming about Hong Kong. The only 2 times that they've gone live to Hong Kong, the first time was when Jiang Zemin landed at Kai Tak Airport. They showed him getting off the plane, and the announcer said this is a new era for Hong Kong. The second time they crossed over was for the lowering of the British and Hong Kong flags. They didn't show all the pageantry and all the celebrations, the goodbyes to the British. They just showed the flag going down. So I think they're showing the moments that reflect the greatest glory on the Chinese and maybe not the greatest glory on the British.
Okay, Deborah, thank you very much. We'll come back to you. At least you don't have the rain. As the British continue, and as the Hong Kong, or Hong Kongers as they call themselves, continue here, we go back to take a quick check on some of the other news with your regular person, Charlie Gibson. Charlie, I really wish you were here, though. You were here a while ago. Sorry you're not here with us.
We were there a couple of years ago in anticipation of this day, and as I watch it, I envy you, as does Jim Wooten, and I think a lot of other people, Peter. That's fascinating to watch, both with the eye on the British and with the eye on what's going to happen now in China because of the fact that they have sovereignty over Hong Kong, and maybe that's something we'll talk about a little bit later in the day. There are a couple of other stories, however, that we do want to mention, and number one is the heavyweight fight on Friday night, such as it was. As you probably know by now, Mike Tyson stunned boxing fans on Saturday in his rematch against Evander Holyfield when he was disqualified for biting off a 1-inch piece of Holyfield's ear. Tomorrow, the Nevada Athletic Commission, which is for now withholding Tyson's $30 million purse, will hold a hearing on what further action to take in this case. And joining me now from Reno, Nevada, is the referee of Saturday's fight, Mills Lane. Mr. Lane, good to have you with us.
Good morning.
Tell me if you thought what Mike Tyson did was intentional.
Well, at the time he actually bit his ear on both sides. I thought that was intentional. I'm not so sure that it was planned. I just think that in the combat and in the rush of things, the way it was going, he just got real rough on the inside, and he was just there, so he did it. But I'm not sure that it was something that was planned out for a long period of time.
Well, I didn't mean intentional and planned in terms of long term, but that he meant to bite Holyfield's ear. It was there was nothing accidental about it.
Oh, there's no question about that. He actually clamped onto it. He meant to bite it.
Now, the first bite occurred, as I gather, about 20 seconds before the end of the third round, and you said to him at that point what?
Well, I told him after I satisfied myself that it was a bite, I said, look, well, I'm not going to say it on your television show what I told him, but I said, hey, you knocked that off, that's a bite, and he said it was a punch. I said, no, that was a bite, you know damn well it was, and that's it. It better not happen again.
And then he did it right away again, right?
Well, pretty quickly thereafter, I'd say 10 or 15 seconds. It wasn't a long time.
And at that point, you just said, it's over. You're done. You're out.
Right. I checked it to make sure that it was a bite. I wanted to make sure there was teeth marks in the ear. It wasn't something else. I saw that it was. And I said, that's it. You're gone. You're out of here.
Was he immediately enraged?
Well, he was angry. I don't know whether when the thing that happened after the event in the ring itself, what triggered that exactly. But he was angry. But he was angry because of the situation, I thought, not so much as that that he was going to have some type of an event after the fight was over, but he was not happy.
You have been in this sport for a while. There have been many unusual occurrences in the game of boxing, bizarre, ugly events that have occurred in the past. Have you ever seen anything as bad as this?
Well, I've never been involved in something like this. Boxing, the whole discipline, I mean, it's the electricity of it, the immediacy of it, the gesti of it. You're right there. Things occur, and that's one of the I guess the allures, the attraction to boxing, what goes on. But I've never seen anything like this. It was wrong. It shouldn't have happened, and I'm sure that our commission will do the appropriate thing.
What is the appropriate thing in your mind?
Well, I'm not going to comment on that because I'm not on the commission, but they have a lot of things they can do, and as I say, we have a good commission here, and we have people like Luther Mack and Jim Nave, and I think Elias Garnham, I think they'll stand up and do what they have to do.
But does someone who does something like this belong in a boxing ring in your mind?
Well, that night, nobody deserves to commit an intentional foul such as the one that was committed that time. Certainly, that individual, severe sanctions should be taken, and I'm sure will be taken. If you ask me whether I would suspend him, I would leave that to the commission. I have my own thoughts about it, but I don't think it's appropriate for me to comment.
Mills Lane, okay, appreciate it. Nice to have you with us. Nice job Saturday night. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's go for the weather around this nation, the United States. Sam Champion.
Good morning, Charlie. So we've seen from Hong Kong, it's their season for high humidity and an awful lot of heavy rain and heat. It's our season for afternoon thunderstorms, and take it from the Ohio Valley, curve it around the Great Lakes. These are where the afternoon thunderstorms, or these areas where the afternoon thunderstorms will pop up. Also down toward, it looks like a little bit the Gulf. There has been 1 or 2 rounds of heavy thunderstorms early this morning around Oklahoma City. I think that'll clear itself out, but really heavy rain expected from Montana, western Montana, all the way across Idaho. On the temperature scale, it still holds cool in the northwest, and it's beautifully warm in the east. That will change by the end of the week. And that's your weather around the nation. Here's what you can expect this morning.
Good morning, I'm Cecily Tynan. It's going to be another gorgeous day right now in Philadelphia. We have some high clouds around, reporting mostly cloudy skies at the airport, 67 degrees, although the clouds are very high, they're thin, so they're allowing a lot of sunshine to filter through. And AccuWeather says going to be partly to mostly sunny throughout the day. Our afternoon high, a couple degrees cooler than yesterday, 86, with very low humidity, so very comfortable. Then for tonight, partly cloudy, overnight low dropping down to 66 degrees.
Another weather update in the next half hour. Charlie?
All right, thank you, Sam. We take a commercial break. When we come back, more from Hong Kong with Peter Jennings. Stay with us.
The good news about eggs is piling up. Recently, the results of 224 studies conducted among 8,000 participants over the past 25 years were compiled by researchers at the University of Arizona. The conclusion? If you're healthy, enjoy eggs along with a low-fat diet. Your cholesterol probably will stay about the same. To get all viewpoints about eggs and cholesterol, talk to your doctor. The incredible edible egg.
More people in the Delaware Valley get their news from Action News than any other source.
Home Depot is very serious about paint. We want to be your paint store.
We have drop cloths and sponges and brushes. And
we can custom tint anything. I mean, you could bring in your shirt and we could match your shirt.
People that work in paint are the same people that work in paint stores. A lot of them have been painters.
You can always tell who the paint associates are because they've got paint in their nails and things.
We have so many products to offer with the paints and stains, it's endless.
Protect your home from damaging moisture with Thompson's Water Seal Waterproofer. It's at the guaranteed low price every day at the Home Depot.
Get between your kids and drugs any way you can if you want to save the kid's life.
Northlands, home of the largest miniature railway on Earth.
This is just a small part of what you'll see here at Northlands.
Northlands, Flemington, New Jersey. You've got to see it to believe it.
The Hong Kong Handover, a special edition of Good Morning America, continues from Hong Kong. Again, Peter Jennings.
There's the Royal Yacht Britannia. In case you're just joining us this morning, it's a little after 8 o'clock in the evening in Hong Kong. And this is quite a stunning picture. This is the People's Liberation Army, the Chinese army, making its way towards Hong Kong. That's Chinese television covering it. Several thousand people in various places. Well, actually, that's the sights and sounds of Hong Kong as seen by Chinese television. But you caught a very brief glimpse there of the People's Liberation Army on its way in here. And that, of course, is what's caused so much concern, not only here in Hong Kong, but elsewhere around the world. In fact, looking at the world's press over the last several days, I think probably there has been more sound and debate about the way in which the army is coming to Hong Kong in the United States than there has been anywhere, as there continues to be in the United States. An enormous amount of debate, particularly in the Congress, about the crackdown on the pro-democracy movement in China in Tiananmen Square in 1989. Whereas I think it can be argued by many people out here that though that horrified the people of Hong Kong, they turned out almost 1 million strong in protest. They've tried very hard to get beyond it. One of our guests this morning with Charlie in New York, I think Charlie is one of the leaders of the pro-democracy movement in Tiananmen Square at that day, Chai Ling.
I am joined by Chai Ling, who is sitting next to me, and we have been watching the pictures from Hong Kong right along with you. And as you've watched them a couple of times, you've gasped and you've said, "Oh my!" Your reaction as you have watched?
My reaction is very emotional. I didn't realize how attached I would be with this whole situation. On one side, as a Chinese, I do feel relieved to see the end of colonialism, because that's really, that's how you've grown up with, listened over and over again by the party government saying, Hong Kong part of China, all that. However, I do feel strongly concerned. I hope the Beijing leadership do remember what really means of the end of the colonialism. That means the people have their rights to be self-government. That is democracy.
There is a lot of talk, a lot of concern in the West about what will happen to civil liberties in Hong Kong, and obviously so much of that is occasioned by what happened where you were in 1989 in Tiananmen. What is your feeling? What do you suspect will happen in Hong Kong?
Oh, what I suspect, I'm really concerned. I visited Hong Kong a month ago, and even though I feel really regret not able to be there right now, I'm concerned the current system of Hong Kong will be destroyed eventually, because with the corruption, which even though the Beijing leadership say want to have one country, two system, but they have no way really maintain or sustain the Hong Kong system they have. For example, we will see the PLA is marching into Hong Kong territory, and they abolished the LegCo, and the media people already started self-censor themselves.
Self-censorship of the media, right?
Right, exactly. And so all the invisible cancer of the corruption is moving into Hong Kong and just slowly going to eat up the current system. I'm really concerned. So I strongly believe unless mainland China started the political reform, the rule of law, and really democratic process, and it's impossible to keep one country, two system.
I'm curious, and Peter wants to get in a second, I'm curious also what you think will happen because of this in China. We're all concentrated on what effects China will have on Hong Kong, but how about vice versa? What effects will Hong Kong, do you think? And the fact that this economic colossus is now the gateway, in effect, to China, what effect that will have on China?
What the effect of for Hong Kong to China is what people and me and everybody else hope. It's Hong Kong would eventually take over mainland China. I do hope that's going to be the case. But economically, yes, in many ways, lots of more investment pour into mainland China through Hong Kong and all that. However, the political reform has to start from mainland China to really allow this kind of positive influence from Hong Kong to mainland China.
Peter?
Ms. Chai, I was just thinking that in many ways you've traveled quite a long road from being this very brave pro-democracy leader in Beijing in 1989, but believing just before it happened that bloodshed was necessary for the Chinese people to have their eyes open. You were here in Hong Kong a month ago. You said then you were very optimistic about China's future. Do you feel better today about the possibility of freedom of expression at least being maintained in Hong Kong?
When I visited Hong Kong a month ago, I get a personal feeling of how the people really react and feel about their own future. So I do have a lot of faith in the people in Hong Kong, where their determination is to keep Hong Kong's future in their own hands. It's going to be a very hard struggle. It's not going to be easy for the people in Hong Kong.
But you know, Peter,
I apologize. Charlie?
Yeah, that's all right.
I apologize for interrupting there, but you're...
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say you might want to look at the harbor.
We're looking right now at the pictures. There's a camera positioned right at the base of the convention center where the eventual handover ceremonies will occur at midnight Hong Kong time. And this is the fireworks show over the harbor that is being put on by the British. There will be a fireworks show of even larger dimensions in about 24 hours tomorrow night that the Chinese will stage over the harbor, but there is going to be many pyrotechnics in Hong Kong over the next 24 hours.
Our apologies in some respects to Chai Ling there, an extraordinarily important force in the pro-democracy movement in China, now a graduate student at the Harvard Business School. Pretty hard to fight this kind of noise.
Peter, as long as you're drowned out in noise, let me just ask Chai Ling one more follow-up actually to something you asked the Secretary of State. And Peter said, you know, now that the British leave, the United States really becomes as strong a guarantor as there is of civil rights and civil freedoms in Hong Kong. But essentially, there really is no guarantor, is there? I mean, there's nobody militarily who is going to step in to do anything if the Chinese crack down on Hong Kong. We really depend on the fact that the Chinese will keep their word, don't we? We really have no more guarantee than that.
That's absolutely true, which is an unfortunate reality. However, I do believe the United States and both Britain and the rest of the world have obligation to help the people in Hong Kong to defend their freedom and liberty, and to also putting pressure on the Beijing leadership to start the political reform, the rule of law, and democratic process. And that's the only guarantee for the one country, two systems. That's the only guarantee for stable, prosper China.
The leaders of the Democratic Party in Hong Kong have already stated objection to the fact that the Legislative Council that now exists is being disbanded. There will be a legislature put in place by the Chinese, but it is very much put in place by them. If you were there in Hong Kong now, would you be protesting, or is it time basically to keep quiet and see what happens?
Totally. I would definitely be part of the force of protesting. Also, the last word, I want to share my deep admiration for Governor Patton for the reform he had briefly carried out before the end of the handover. I think the reform he tried to instill a political, a democratic system, allow people to have, logical and voting is, and it's wonderful. I hope that can continue.
All right, Chai Ling, it was good to talk to you. Thank you, and appreciate your joining us. We continue to look at the pictures of the fireworks show over the Hong Kong harbor, brilliantly lighting the night. Let's go back to Peter Jennings. Peter?
Thank you, Charlie. I said earlier, Charlie, that everything was cooperative. They're using 18 tons of fireworks, and it's a joint effort of a British fireworks and a Chinese company. For those of you who are specialists in fireworks, the Chinese concentrate on great star shows, and the Western-style fireworks, which you're seeing much more of at the moment, use the Roman candle patterns. They last a little longer in the sky. One of the great American experts on fireworks, George Plimpton, probably needed to be with us today. same British company which made the fireworks for the victory over Japan at the end of World War II. And if you think that fireworks don't have something to do with the New World Order, some of the great American fireworks makers are concerned that the Chinese are dumping fireworks in the United States and are complaining to Congress. But for now, it is very celebratory. The violence that is sometimes portrayed in the old pictures of the First and Second Opium War that the British fought with the Chinese. But
Come on in. Anybody home?
Sometimes the best reunions happen by chance.
We were hungry.
Now you can always be ready with the best Ziploc storage bag ever. New Ziploc Color Lock bags have the only color seal you can see and feel. So all the love you put in today comes out just as fresh tomorrow.
Great meal, Mom.
You got something I could take this home in?
I think I could find something.
New Ziploc brand Color Lock bags. Ziploc was made for tomorrow.
My favorite store is having my favorite sale. Pier 1 summer sale and clearance. Get great stuff like lamps, furniture, dinnerware, and more. All at savings of up to 75% off. So stop by Pier 1 now. It's your home. Make it great for less.
As long as home extends way beyond your doorstep.
Brought to you by Maxwell House.
And the next small town is just 1 block away. As long as someone never fails to leave a light on. Maxwell House will always be good to the last drop.
When I hear low prices on a can of paint, I say, wait a second. Paint isn't about price. Paint is health and beauty care for your house. My house, where my family lives, deserves the best. Professionals who do the paint thing tell you doing it right the first time costs less than doing it over. So use the best paint, Benjamin Moore, and get the best advice. A Benjamin Moore dealer. That's the best way to the best look.
Right now, save $5 a gallon on Benjamin Moore's best interior and exterior paint with mail-in rebate.
My father is obsessed with healthy teeth. I like healthy too, but I also want my teeth white.
New Mentadent Advanced Whitening Toothpaste has a special whitening formula and the fluoride, baking soda, and peroxide dentists recommend.
My dad's happy, and I'm happy.
Action News is brought to you by the Huntington Learning Center.
Hello again, I'm Monica Melpass. It is 8:25 now on this Monday, June 30th. Partly sunny skies, 72 degrees out there right now. We'll check the official AccuWeather word for you in just a moment. In the news, we have word of a body recovered in the Schuylkill River this morning. Officials were called out to the scene here in the area of Montgomery Drive about 6:45. Police received a call that someone saw a body floating in the river just south of the Columbia Bridge in the area of 13 Boathouse Row. Then about a half an hour ago, rescuers pulled what appears to be a body from the water and covered it. We'll have more information for you as soon as we get it. Meantime, the search has been suspended for 2 men believed to have drowned in New Jersey waters over the weekend. Frank Pullum Sr. of Trenton and Charles Crusher of Philadelphia remain missing after separate incidents that happened Saturday. Officials will decide today whether to resume searching for those victims. The old Jack Frost Sugar Refinery in Fishtown proved to be a stubborn adversary for demolition crews. Officials tried several times to implode the building yesterday, but with no success. They even wrapped cables around it to try to drag it down. Some 12 hours later, without warning, the building collapsed without any help. Fortunately, no one was injured in that. 2 young men are lucky to be alive this morning after a freak accident involving a tree in Marion. It happened about 6:30 last night on City Avenue near Raynham Road. Police say 2 young men were just walking in that area when a tree fell on top of them, pinning them to the ground. A passerby helped rescue the victims. They were taken to the University of Pennsylvania Medical Center and treated for minor injuries. No word what caused the tree to give way.
My homework
I forgot it. Geometry, biology. Why do we have to know this stuff anyway?
What your child says and what they mean may be two different things. If your child is struggling in school, Huntington Learning Center can help. Huntington can find out what's keeping your child from succeeding and correct it for good.
Yeah, that's it. I'm lazy.
Your child may be telling you more than you realize. Call 1-800-CAN-LEARN. Your child can learn.
Checking sports, the Phillies fans have another disappointment to deal with this morning. Yesterday in Atlanta, Scott Ruffcorn was working a no-hitter in the 6th inning, but he got a little wild. Plunky Ryan Klesko, he was pulled from the game. Then, as luck would have it, the very next batter takes reliever Ron Blazer out of the park, and the Braves go on to win it 6-5, the final score. Phillies play in Baltimore tonight. Let's go outside to Cecily Tynan and check out the forecast. Pretty nice, huh?
Oh, it's beautiful, Monica. We're on a roll. This is going to be the 4th beautiful day in a row. And this morning we have some high clouds around, partly sunny officially in Philadelphia. 72 degrees, and AccuWeather says going to be partly sunny, warm but not humid, so very comfortable. Our afternoon high up to 86 degrees, which is just 1 degree above normal, so pretty much where we should be this time of the year. Then for tonight, a few more clouds will move in, partly cloudy, overnight low down to 66. Tomorrow, the humidity will be returning, so enjoy today. We'll see a lot of sunshine, low humidity, topping off at 86 degrees, looking good. Monica?
All right, thank you, Cecily. Coming up later today at noon, or rather at 11 this morning, we will have continuing live coverage of the Chinese takeover of Hong Kong. ABC News will take you there live at 11. For all of us at Action News, I'm Monica Melpass. Have a great day.
First, their daughter was killed by a drunk driver. Then they say the judge in the precedent-setting case victimized them again. How are they fighting back? Plus, why is defense attorney Jack McMahon calling the conviction of carnival killer Deirdre Frazier the most difficult loss of his career? And is the Brad and Gwyneth split a myth? How's Liz Taylor planning to follow in Princess Di's footsteps? And is a Kennedy baby really on the way? Janet Charlton has the scoop from Hollywood next AM Live.
AM Live, today at 10 on 6 ABC.
Well, folks, it's all come down to this. He's got to be feeling the pressure.
You're right, Frank. He clearly doesn't have his good stuff today.
Hold on. The skipper's back from Pathmark. He's bringing in Kingsford.
Remember, fans, Kingsford is ready twice as fast as other charcoals and burns even longer. Pick some up at Pathmark and get great savings on all your barbecue needs. Come into Pathmark today for Kingsford, the surefire.
Hey, this guy's really cooking out there.
WPVI TV Philadelphia, serving the Delaware Valley.
She tells her roommate she wants to be more than friends. Secret crushes revealed. Next, Jenny Jones.
The Hong Kong Handover, a special edition of Good Morning America. Now reporting from Hong Kong, Peter Jennings.
Good morning, everybody. Live from Hong Kong again, 8:30 in the evening here. It's the rain appears to have passed. If you want to know how long it takes to shoot off 18 tons of fireworks, we think about 23 minutes and many, many millions of dollars. A joint effort by British and Chinese company. One of the greatest celebrations of fireworks that we have ever seen over Victoria Harbor in Hong Kong, as millions of people around the world share in this transition of power from the end of British rule in Hong Kong after 156 years to Chinese rule as of the stroke of midnight, 3.5 hours from now. And while we watch this, take a look up in the corner of your screen. You'll see what's happening just over what is still the Chinese frontier with Hong Kong. The first contingents, the first large contingents of the People's Liberation Army, waiting to move deeper into the 14 barracks here in Hong Kong and the New Territories itself, where they will take up residence. Before first light or just after first light tomorrow, there'll be about 4,000 Chinese troops here, their Army, their Navy, and their Air Force. They'll come by land and by sea and by air as well from various places in China. They've all been impeccably trained to behave here, and many of them will remain in their barracks. There's been a small contingent here so far. They've had a little difficulty, but they have been quite well received by the people of Hong Kong. The first 196 of them, at least, who've been here, had a few traffic accidents. But as we've said a couple of times today, this is a worldwide celebration for ethnic Chinese. And so as we look at the fireworks again now, let us check in around North America. First with Bill Ritter, who's in Chinatown in New York City. Bill, how have people reacted there?
Good morning, people. Peter, much anticipation among people here in Chinatown. Of course, one of the largest pockets of Chinese American population in America here in Chinatown, and a major tourist attraction for anyone who comes in New York. Much anticipation, Peter. I'm going to set the stage for you. People are gathered around this giant television set watching what they're watching in China. This is Chinese television, so they're getting a feel for what some of their relatives and family members are seeing. There is a parade scheduled. Tommy, if you can see over there, there's a float that is being set up. Floats will come down here, up the street in Chinatown, and then speakers are going to start to line up, Peter, and symbolically in about an hour and a half, a British flag will be raised and then quickly lowered, and then the Chinese flag will be raised. All that happening over the next few hours to coincide with what's happening there in Hong Kong, Peter.
Thanks very much, Bill Ritter. Now, of course, many of the people in Hong Kong who knew that 1997 was coming and wanted to get out of this place and take a measure of safety in a second passport went to Canada and settled, many of them, in the west coast city of Vancouver, British Columbia, where ABC's Bill Redeker is today. Bill, the reaction there.
Good morning, Peter. I think there's a fair amount of optimism about the future for the economy of Hong Kong. That said, there are some people here who are a little bit more pessimistic about human rights and the government systems that are going to be put into effect in Hong Kong, which is why, of course, they came to Canada. There will be a couple of celebrations later today, and I should be pointing out to you as well that about half of the 300,000 Hong Kong Chinese who moved to Vancouver are actually today back in Hong Kong. They're that optimistic, at least for the moment. Of course, they've also got that Canadian passport. Should anything go wrong, they can come back here.
Okay, Bill, thanks very much. Talk to you a little later on. They're sometimes called astronauts or parachute children, those who are able to come and go in Hong Kong as times warrant. But the sky is red tonight. And of course, there's an enormous Chinese community in the United States of America. Oh, look at that. And on the West Coast, let's just hang on for just a second. Wow. And there's the dragon, one of the great beneficial creatures of Chinese culture, down there in the corner. Oh, surely one of the greatest celebrations of fireworks we've seen in a long time. British and Chinese together. Now, when we started this program this morning, your time, tonight our time, we talked about the Great Opium War, and which led to the British having Hong Kong in the first place. 156 years ago, the British were growing opium in India, exporting it, stuffing it down Chinese throats, and one of the great Chinese characters is an ancestor of our next correspondent. He was the Chinese commissioner of the day who threw the opium away, invoking the British wrath. We go to Los Angeles and ABC's Carol Lynn. Carol, nice to have you with us. Family still pay close attention to the history?
Absolutely. Like much of Chinese folklore, it has passed through the generations, and I was having a conversation with my mother the other night over dinner, and she was telling me about my cousin, Commissioner Xi Lin, who was actually the catalyst of the first Opium War. He, in 1839, thought he was following the orders of the last Qing emperor and actually initiated what was the equivalent of the Chinese Boston Tea Party. He dumped 3 million pounds of opium, foreign-owned opium, into the China Sea, triggering the first of the Opium Wars. But as a result of that, nobody expected the humiliation that would follow once China lost the Hong Kong territory and he was banished to the western remote part of China. And throughout the generations, even through the Cultural Revolution in 1967, my family, the Lin family in the Fuzhou province, suffered that humiliation. They were persecuted by the Red Guards. One of Xi Jilin's great-great-grandsons actually died in prison as a result of that legacy. But today, however, Xi Jilin is considered a hero, one of the great progressive bureaucrats of China in fighting the anti-drug war. And in fact, today he is now one of the featured characters in the Opium War movie, which is to be released in mainland China on July 1st. He is the great crusader against the drug problem, which is currently reaching record proportions in China. Interesting little family history.
Pride for you, Carol? Pride for
Absolutely.
You today, Carol?
Pride for me, but very different as a second-generation Chinese American. I was, again, talking with my mother last night, and she was explaining to me how she'd always felt quite strange that Hong Kong had belonged to the Brits. Every time she went through Hong Kong to go to mainland China, she would pass through British customs and then once again through Chinese customs. I myself, as a second generation, am less affected by it, but I take great pride in seeing my mother's reaction to watching as her former homeland takes back a territory.
Well, it's great to have you with us this morning. We'll come back to you a little later and get the reaction of the rest of the community in Los Angeles. In New York City, there's going to be a statue before long to Xi Jilin, the Chinese commissioner who dumped all that opium, that invoked the British wrath, that started the Opium War, as Carol's just told you. But throughout the world today, however one feels about the political administration in China today, and not very many people outside China feel very positive about it, you hear reports from everywhere, a deep sense of ethnic pride that a long-held Chinese dream, whatever one's political persuasion, is being realized with the return of a dismembered part of the memberland being brought together. We'll continue our coverage of Hong Kong and China in just a moment.
The Hong Kong Handover, a special edition of Good Morning America, will continue in a moment.
Sign up for Sprint Cent's dime a minute rate now, and your evenings and weekends will never be the same again.
So I'm heading home from work, and suddenly, I'm in the dime zone. All at once, everyone's dog is getting off my lawn. And best of all my long-distance calls are just 10 cents a minute.
With Sprint Cents, you're in the dime zone, every weeknight and all weekend long. And when you sign up now, you'll also get up to 100 minutes free.
You'll probably need one of these.
Call now, 1-800-PIN-DROP.
For a good part of her 82 years, Jean Durston has been diving into every day. She'll tell you swimming as well as setting a few world records just help